Well, good afternoon, fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior fighting for your right just to be an American. It is December 28th, the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're hyphen-free, PC-free zone. God is still in control, and He does love you. And we do what we do here at the Dan Clements Show, knowing the fear of the Lord. We persuade folks of the truth, and I'm broadcasting live as usual from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. Hopefully this broadcast finds you doing well. Hopefully you survive the Christmas holiday. We have one more major holiday before we can all get back to normal. Excuse me, normal's a relative term, I understand that. But hopefully you have plans already for the New Year's weekend. We always have plans at at our local congregation where we have a fellowship on New Year's Eve night. Hopefully I'll feel up to it to be able to attend that for a couple hours anyway. I don't think I'll be able to survive through midnight, but at least I'll be able to fellowship with the brethren to ring in or start to ring in the new year on Sunday night coming into Monday. Now, just real quick, next week I plan on having a full 5-day week. I'm going to broadcast on New Year's Day and have a regular show on New Year's Day. I think it's going to be a regular show. I might, I don't know yet. I don't know. I was actually thinking about maybe having a hangout on Monday and inviting a few people over the hangout and talk about 2017 and maybe some expectations of 2018. We'll see if I can. I don't know if enough people are going to be home. We're going to be able to do that. And I need to work on the Google Hangout to get it working with my open broadcast studio, so I can at least broadcast it on YouTube. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do both, but I'm going to work on this. I really am, and so I'll let you know hopefully by tomorrow what our plans are for the Monday show. I'd really like to have an interactive show here at the Dan Clements Show. Now, well, I don't know. I can't remember if I said anything about this yesterday. My stepmother passed away on Tuesday. I finally got a hold of my father last night. They're doing as well as can be expected. Per her wishes, she did not want to have a viewing. She is being cremated, and they're going to have a memorial service later on just for the family. So there's no urgent need for me to go out there to Ohio right now. I was kind of wondering if it's going to need to go out there. My dad told me, no, there's no urgent need for you to come out here. And we had a long talk. As you know, I don't talk to my dad that often. And so when we do, we talk for quite a while. And so it was good to hear from my dad. And I tried to make sure the rest of my family was informed because my mom called me this morning because she saw an obituary in the paper and didn't think I knew that she passed away, and I told her yes, I knew the night she passed, that night that she did pass away. So, but there's a lot of things that me and my dad discussed in our conversations, and I've said this in the past about, my dad's not going to change. He isn't. For my dad, the pasture is always greener on the other side of the fence. And I'm not trying to put my dad down or put him in a bad light. I'm just saying the way things are. Between him and I, that his success or lack thereof is not his fault, it's somebody else's fault. My son Kyle has some of the same ideas, that management, he works in a union, so management doesn't know what they're doing. If it was him, he would do things differently. And when I challenge him to become part of management to change things, if he thinks things are that bad, he hems and haws about it. And there's a theme that runs through that type of ideology, where the grass is always greener, I can do it better, somebody else is at fault for my lack of success. The wages, and this always happens when I talk to my dad, that there's all these complaints about, businesses are, screwing over the little guy. And, this is why we can never get ahead. And it just, again, it just brings up some thoughts and ideas and some feelings that I personally would rather not deal with, because there's such a, on the negative side of things. And we live in a society today that does the same thing. We have, I titled the show today, Too Many Rogue Elements and Free Radicals in America. And it's true. We have way too many people that, like in the Me Too movement. I have an article here, we'll get to it, from Reason.com. Me Too's turning into a witch hunt. So you have a bunch of social justice tyrants that have taken over these movements, infiltrated these movements, and exercised their tyrannical ideology. And a movement like Me Too, which I honestly believe started out as, a good thing. That, we need to get these sexual harassment, whether they're men or women, these harassers, we need to deal with them, and they need to be dealt with. But the Me Too movement and some of the third wave feminists who've globbed onto this are taking it too far. And they don't care if, and we talked about this last week on the show, that people, even in the court of public opinion, we've gotten away from guilty until proven innocent and replaced that with innocent until proven guilt, or guilty until proven innocent. And I said I've been trying to create these thumbnails for each show and try to express the main thought of the show. And that particular thumbnail, this guilty until proven innocent, is the ideology of a totalitarian government. It is not the ideas that have kept America the way it has been for a couple hundred years now or better. Even in the eyes of the public, we should always presume the person is innocent until proven otherwise. And why do I say that? Because I want to be treated the same way I treat other people. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, my question to folks is, especially at the Me Too movement, if you don't have the facts, or you don't have all the facts and all the evidence, how can a third wave feminist say that, it doesn't matter if we catch some innocent men up in this and they ruin their lives, possibly their marriage, their relationship with their children, and they did nothing wrong? How can you say that's okay here in America? I say it isn't okay. I shared a story yesterday about a Formula One driver who told his nephew, little boys don't wear princess outfits. And he got taken to task to the point where he apologized for nothing. He did nothing wrong by saying that. But we have a bunch of social justice tyrants out there that want everybody to adhere to the way they think, but they don't care about our ideas, what our principles are, or anything like that. And again, it infuriates me that these social justice tyrants have infiltrated society to the point to where everything becomes a witch hunt, to where if you aren't down with the politically correct ideology of the day, and it is of the day, I mean, it changes on a day-to-day basis. PC ideologies are not based in objective facts or truth. They are very subjective, and it's like Bill Clinton used to do. He used to wet his finger, stick it up in the air, and see which way the wind's blowing. And that's the way he went. Bill Clinton did not act on principles. He acted on what the mob felt that day. And as far as I'm concerned, the mob doesn't always get it right. And the reason why the mob doesn't get it right is because, for the most part, the vast majority of the mob is woefully ignorant of whatever they think they got right. With the Me Too movement, all these people, we need to crucify these people. Doesn't matter if they're innocent or not. If they just have the accusation thrown at them, then they must be guilty. And this all came, a lot of this Me Too started with Hollywood, and it was really exasperating. I don't want to use a big term like that. It was really come to a boiling point beyond expression with Roy Moore, And he stood firm and said, these, my accusers are lying to you. And each and every one of them that accused him was found to be lying. But the Me Too crowd, stirred up by the social justice tyrants, they don't care. They don't care if he might be an innocent man. He was accused. And he doesn't hold the politically correct ideology that we hold, so therefore he must be destroyed. We cannot allow a counter argument to our ideology. And so we have too many rogue elements and too many free radicals in this country. And what I mean by rogue element is these they call them SJWs. And I will not call them warriors, because they are not a warrior. They are nowhere, no semblance of a warrior. They do not have the mentality of a warrior. They do not have the intestinal fortitude of a warrior. And they do not have the intellectual honesty of a warrior. Sorry. And the reason why I call them SJTs, social justice tyrants, is because they come from an authoritarian standpoint. That if you are not following what we prescribe as being politically correct, or the cause du jour of the day, then you need to be eliminated. And as far as I'm concerned, that's no way for society to behave. It is absolutely no way for a society to behave. And if you think it is, then the problem's with you, not with me. And so I stand against a lot of these movements of the day. Because in the final analysis, they always get co-opted by the wrong people. And the wrong people use them for the wrong reasons, to try to gain a political advantage over their opponents. And try to smear, doesn't matter if they're innocent people or not. They just, like third-wave feminists. They don't care if innocent people are caught up in this Me Too movement. Doesn't matter to them. Well, what about all the ones that got away with it? These innocent folks are standing in for them. Really? Really? Do you use that same ideology for somebody that's facing the death penalty? Now, I've tempered my ideas about the death penalty over the years. I don't totally rule it out, but I think until we get a better system and we know for sure, 100% sure, that we're not putting to death an innocent, I won't say an innocent person, but a wrongly accused person. And yeah, maybe an innocent person, but until they can guarantee me with 100% accuracy, I think it just should be life in prison. But that life imprisonment should not be easy. That life imprisonment should not be with all the creature comforts that we enjoy on the outside, like TV and computers. A life sentence, they're never getting out. They're never going to contribute to society again. And maybe I'm a little harsher. I think sometimes they just need to be locked away and the key lost. You know? But, again, what about the innocent? So we can't go that far. That's my feelings, but I don't try to live by my feelings, because my feelings are too subjective. And we have Congress. Congress has totally gone rogue on us, and most people don't even recognize it. Congress has gone rogue. They don't follow the Constitution. They don't pay homage to their oaths that they've taken, the oath of office. That they swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. They do everything but protect the Constitution of the United States, and they only bring it out as a buzzword or a punchline at cocktail parties, or when they think it'll resonate with their constituents. You know, that whatever they think is being protected by the Constitution, they're wrong most of the time, almost 100% of the time. But their constituents don't know that, because their constituents are woefully ignorant or ill-informed, and actually neglecting their own education when it comes to the Constitution, when it comes to upholding the things of the Constitution, or even knowing what's in the Constitution. That's one of the biggest problems we have in the United States today. When you talk to somebody, when I talk to somebody saying that the EPA is unconstitutional, and the states, all 50 states have a Department of Environmental Protection, or their own version of the EPA, and they do a far better job of taking care of the environment in their state than the EPA can, because the EPA is like a one-size-fits-all type thing. That's another layer of bureaucracy that the American people don't need at the federal level. That's a state's issue. The states are supposed to take care of their own environments. And when I bring up the constitutionality of this, they go berserk. What are you talking about? We got to protect the environment. Well, the states are doing that. Why does the federal government have to do it, especially if it's not an enumerated power? And if, I even give them an out. If you want the EPA to exist under the Constitution, amend the Constitution. If you want the FCC to exist under the Constitution, amend the Constitution to give that enumerated power to the federal government. People who do not know their constitutions are afraid of the constitutions, especially the Constitution of the United States. They don't even know their state or local, the state constitutions that created their states or that the states operate off of. And the federal Constitution, they've been told so long that you need to be a constitutional lawyer to understand it, so we'll tell you what's in it. And we have politicians like Nancy Pelosi and Maxine Waters and Sheila Jackson Lee and other ones, Chucky Schumer, even Republicans that don't even know the Constitution. Why is it that a guy from flyover country here in Pennsylvania knows more about the Constitution than the vast majority of our elected officials in the United States? Why is it that I know more than they do? Why is it that I can understand it and they can't or refuse to? Because it doesn't fit with their agenda. And when you talk to somebody that wants the federal government to be the all-encompassing, everything, the great eye in the sky that's going to deliver these people into the promised land, when you tell them that you can amend the Constitution to give the federal government that power, that they go either glass-eyed like a deer caught in the headlights, or they give you every other argument in the book. Well, it's hard to get amendments passed to change the Constitution. Okay, it's hard, it's not impossible. Can't say it's impossible when we've amended the Constitution 27 times. So it's not impossible, but yeah, there is a high hurdle. Why is there a high hurdle? Because we want to make sure, the Founding Fathers wanted to make sure that when you amend the Constitution, it is to the benefit of all, the general welfare of all, not just a few. So again, we've had a rogue Congress for a long time that has not adhered to the Constitution of the United States, that has driven us into, actually spent us into a $20 trillion operating debt, and that's it climbing, plus the unfunded liabilities in Congress that there's no way we can ever meet, like the welfare system, is upwards of $200 trillion. One of the highest estimates. The lowest ones I've seen was $120 trillion, but that doesn't matter when the planet's gross domestic product is only about $63 to $65 trillion. Where are we going to come up with this money? We're not. But people don't care. Well, tax the rich. The rich aren't paying their fair share. Well, I'm sorry, I think the rich is paying more than their fair share. Matter of fact, the rich are the ones that invest in businesses to give people their jobs. Not give them, but actually have jobs out there that people can go, if they're qualified, to get it. And the free radicals we have in this country are all the American citizens who want to blame their lot in life on everybody else but themselves. That they always look on the other side of the fence to see if it's greener on the other side of the fence or not. And it never is. It never is. And those are the free radicals we have in this country, the social justice tyrants that glob onto these like Me Too movements and literally destroy them. Or these radical third wave feminists that think their idea is the best because they think that they're oppressed. And if you dare disagree with them, they'll try to destroy you. Because you have a different idea about how things should actually work and how things have worked, not perfectly, but for the most part for the betterment of society for thousands and thousands of years. And yet they want to say that they know better. That they know better than these third wave feminists, these women, who, well, you're a man, you just can't understand. Help me to understand. Don't just sit there and tell me you'll never be able to understand. Help me to understand. But they never do. They want you to automatically, for some reason or somehow, be sympathetic with their cause of feminism without truly explaining it to you in terms that everybody can understand. And every time I drove into it and really tried to get down the nuts and bolts of especially the third wave feminism, the first two ways of feminism I agree with. You know, way back when the suffrage movement, you know, women's right to vote. I totally agree with that. And then the second one was equal rights. I agree with that. If a woman is going to do the same job as a man, she should be paid the same. However, there are a lot of other elements that go into that. And I don't want to get into that. But the pay gap is a myth. It's been debunked so many times, but yet the social justice tyrants, oh, no, no, no. You don't know what you're talking about. The pay gap is not a myth. And if you keep saying it's a myth, we'll destroy you. Okay, Senator Palpatine. Hate to bring a Star Wars reference in here. But we have a federal workforce that, I have this article here about, fell over, I read this. Federal workers are opposed to overtake salaries of senators. D.C. gets highest pay raise. And this always happens. And these folks out there, these social justice tyrants and all these folks in these very socialistic movements, they don't care. They don't care if D.C., if bureaucrats are getting pay raises and some federal workers are opposed to make more money a year than senators or congressmen, or the equivalent in the public sector, you know, the equivalent job and pay in the public sector. They've been far and away above regular Americans for a long time. But they don't care because that's their folks. These are the people that are going to bring in their dream of socialism someday. That the right people just have not been in charge. Socialism will work. And this is what the millennials are, the lie of the millennials and the next generation after them is being told. And again, there are a bunch of free radicals out there. They're so radical they don't even know what they know. They're just spouting a line. They're just spouting an ideology that they don't even want put to the test in the court of public opinion or the marketplace of public opinion. I can't tell you how many times I've watched a YouTube video and wanted to leave a comment, especially with the third wave feminists, and it's like the comments are disabled. And then, God forbid, if you make a rebuttal video and use any of the minutes or clips out of their video or footage out of their videos to make a rebuttal video, then they slap you with copyright infringements and the whole 9 yards and want to sue you. I found this one channel, YouTube lawyer, and he's been digging up all these lawsuits. I just couldn't believe it. Well, I guess because I didn't know about it, I couldn't believe it. But once I started getting into it and seeing some of these frivolous lawsuits that I call them, yeah, I can believe it because of the free radicals we have in our society today. So we have too many rogue elements and free radicals in our society, and we need to do something about it. One of the best ways you can fight this, I'm going to show my age here, folks, and I'm going to show you what I used to watch when I was a kid and even a young adult. Knowing is half the battle. And if you're like me, you know exactly where that came from. I won't say, if you want to leave a comment, like Dave's in the chat room now, knowing's half the battle. And for the most part, at least on social media anyway, and on YouTube when I leave comments and stuff and I get comments back, these folks are woefully ignorant, even in what they're supposedly defending. Even what they're supposedly defending. So informing yourself, arming yourself with knowledge, and being prepared. You know, as a Christian, we're told, Peter, the Apostle Peter told us, you need to be ready to give, if someone walks up to you and ask you, why do you hope in Jesus Christ? You need to be ready to give an answer to that person. And if you're not, if you don't have an answer for that, then you need to stop whatever you're doing and go back and find out why you believe in Jesus Christ, why you have this hope that's only found in Jesus Christ. We're commanded to do that. And I take that into the rest of my life. If someone asks me why I believe something or why I hold a certain position, a political position or whatever, economic position, if someone asks me, I need to be ready to give them an answer. If I am defending this, I need to be able to defend that. I need to be able to give folks that information that they need in order to make right decisions about what's going on in their lives. Yeah, Dave makes a good point in here that goes along with what I'm saying. He says, if you say you understand, it somehow diminishes the magnitude of their situation, so they insist that you can never understand. And there's a lot of things that I do understand, I empathize with, and I sympathize with folks out there. And because there's a lot of things I've went through personally myself in life. There's a lot of things that my wife has went through. There's a lot of things that my friends have went through. And if there's one thing that I learned in life is sometimes if you watch their friends and see the mistakes they made, you can use them as like the canary in the coal mine so you can avoid those same mistakes. And I imagine most of my friends look at me as a pretty good example of that. Do not copy the mistakes of that Dan Clements. It'll lead you to ruin every time. And this is where we're at in society. And this is why we're in so much trouble today. And we shouldn't be. As a matter of fact, like I said, I don't let people get away with half the stuff they think they're going to get away with me. I stand firm in my convictions and principles until someone through reason, logic, evidence, and proof can dissuade me of my principles that I'm standing for. And that's happened quite a few times over the course of my life. And I'm perfectly happy with being shown the truth about something, but it needs to be backed up with fact-based evidence. Not just, well, this is how I feel, or this is what Aunt Trudy told me 20 years ago. You know, and I believe my Aunt Trudy, no matter how ridiculous it might be, whatever Aunt Trudy said. If you got an Aunt Trudy, I'm not picking on Aunt Trudy. I just sort of picked that name out of the hat. And so, again, it just amazes me in our society how we've gotten to where we're at in our society today. Because people are too afraid of the social justice tyrants out there that seem to permeate every aspect of our lives. Folks, if you want to help support the Dan Clement Show, you can go over to the DanClementShow.com, my show notes page, and on the menu bar you can click the Cafe Press, the TDSC Cafe Press button. It'll take you right over to my Cafe Press page, and you can buy the bling of the show. I got t-shirts, men's t-shirts, women's t-shirts, a hoodie, hats, coffee mugs, either ceramic for your desk or travel, and I also have a mouse pad if you're so inclined to help support the Dan Clement Show. And a percentage of the proceeds come to me, and you'll get something in return besides a great show. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I think I put out some pretty decent shows. And but you'll also have something else to help remind you of the Dan Clement Show. Today's daily Bible reading comes from 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 14 through 18. Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm. May the Lord repay him according to his works. You also must be aware of him, for he has greatly resisted our words. At my first offense no one stood with me, but all forsook me. May it not be charged against them. But the Lord stood with me and strengthened me, so that the message might be preached fully through me, and that all Gentiles might hear. Also I was delivered out of the mouth of the lion, and the Lord will deliver me from every evil work and preserve me for his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen. As we're coming into this new year, let's take these words to heart, especially verse 17, but the Lord stood with me and strengthened me. You know, if we're following Jesus Christ and we're following his commandments and we're doing what he wants us to do to be the type of Christians he needs us to be, then we have to remember that the Lord is standing with us and he's strengthening us. And we can do nothing outside of him. We can do nothing outside of Jesus Christ. Today's quote mail comes from Leo the Great. Invisible in his own nature, God became visible in ours, beyond our grasp. He chose to come within our grasp. He's talking about the birth of Jesus Christ, about how God came into his own creation in the flesh. Short Bible lesson today, and this is a good one. I love biblical evidences, right? And this is from answersingenesis.org. 6 evidences of a young earth. There's way more than that, but there's the folks over at Answers in Genesis have put this together. 6 evidences of a young earth. And these are some that have some of the best scientific minds in the world that do not believe in creationism scratching their heads about. They really do. Now, some of the stories that I have up today, let me see where I'm at on this. Some of it has to do with a lot of the what's going on in the Senate, what's going on in the House as far as sexual harassment. Like I said, I got a story about Me Too that we're going to get into a little bit here, and just sort of take it from the standpoint of what I was talking about in my monologue there, that there's too many Americans out there letting these rogue elements and free radicals out there run amok without being challenged, without doing what is needful for them to be challenged, because in all honesty, I think they're afraid. I really do. I think there's an element of fear here that some people just don't want to deal with. You know, they don't want to go up against these social justice tyrants for fear that they're going to be doxxed, that they're going to be harassed in social media to the point that they're going to be driven off social media. So instead of trying to weather that storm, they just don't engage to begin with. They're already in retreat before the battle's even started, and the battle can be easily won if you want to put it that way. The battle can be easily won, and we continue just to back away and back away and back away, and we don't do what is truly needful for us to do. And I hope somebody calls me out if I ever do this. So I hope someone calls me out if I ever shy away from a fight. Because I don't want to shy away from that fight. I don't want to have to fight somebody. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of stepping away from a fight. Because what happens when you step away from the fight? Especially when you're talking about an ideological fight. I'm not talking about getting into fist and cuffs with folks. I'm really not. I'm talking about what happens when you get into a philosophical or principle or an ideological fight with somebody. What are you to do? What are you to do? Because if you back away from the fight, doesn't mean that the fight's going to be over. Doesn't mean that they're not going to come after you. You know, a lot of times in the military, we're taught about organized retreats. If we have to retreat, we're going to do it in an orderly fashion. And a lot of times what that means is leaving a couple folks behind to cover the rest of the, let's say your platoon's retreating out of a hostile area. Well, you can't just turn your backs and run, because the enemy will start shooting you in the back. You've got to leave a rear guard to cover your retreat, so it's organized. And sometimes the folks that stay behind to cover the retreat, sometimes that's a sacrificial effort on the part of the soldiers that stay behind it to cover the retreat, so they can give their rest of the platoon either time to dig in a better defensible position, or to hook up with other elements in their company, so they can help defend, attack, whatever they're doing. It has to be an organized retreat. And we practiced that when I was in the Army National Guard on maneuvers. We practiced that quite a bit, because it's an important part of the strategy. But the problem with always retreating is you're never gaining ground, and you're giving your enemy fodder for the cannons, I guess, if you want to call it that. and you're giving them a win when it really wasn't a win. You just chose not to engage. And somebody else down the road is going to have to deal with that. And if you could have dealt with that and maybe, you know, threw some cold water on the movement earlier on and you didn't, you know, why not? And again, I understand, you know, we have friends and family that we're especially our you know, if you're married, husband, wife, children, our place of work and stuff like that we have to take into consideration. But at the end of the day, do we let evil stand and win the battlefield, or do we stand up and say, no, this line and no further? You know, do we draw that proverbial line in the sand and say, this is it. This is as far as I'm willing to retreat. If you're going to push me off of this, you're going to have to take me down. And so in Congress, this story just irks me to no end. It really, really does. In Congress, we have the Senate Rules Committee reveals $1.5 million spent in harassment settlements since 1998. And this is over at One American News Network, and this was posted, I know you can't see the whole title there. This was posted 2 days ago on the 26th. And they're talking about the Senate Rules and Administration Committee released a report detailing how much taxpayer money was used to settle sexual harassment claims against Senate. This is $1.5 million just for senators alone. The findings published Monday night reveal $1.5 million has been spent on harassment settlements over the course of almost 20 years. However, not all settlements listed in the report are in relation to sexual harassment. More than $420,000 of taxpayer money was used to settle racial discrimination claims against senators. This comes after the House released its findings earlier this month, showing more than $340,000 was used in similar settlements from 2008 to 2012. Okay, again, this is news to me about these racial discrimination claims against the senators. And so they had, I have to dig into this, but isn't there some laws on the books about being able to sue a sitting senator or a sitting congressman when it comes to these type of things? Especially when these suits about racial discrimination, that's something that's very, very hard to prove. And the burden of proof should be on the accuser. But set that aside, what about all the sexual harassment settlements? And as far as I'm concerned, if they're settling it, these need to, first off, they need to be investigated. And if there was sexual harassment found on the part of the senator, he or she should be asked to resign. They should go through an ethics committee hearing, and they should be asked to step down and resign. Secondly, I think they should pay the American taxpayers back the money that they paid out for hush money in these settlements that nobody knew about, or at least the public didn't know about. And this is one of the reasons why I call the Congress is a rogue element. They're doing so much, and this is probably just the tip of the iceberg. They're doing so much that the American people have a right to know, but we don't, behind closed doors, like this, like settling this sexual harassment lawsuits, without the American people knowing about it. And the thing is, if you do things behind closed doors like this, to me, whether it's right or wrong, it smacks of guilt. If you're willing just to pay this out to make it go away, to me it smacks of guilt. I think an innocent man would want his day in court. Don't you? But even after saying that, I still believe that the senator or the representative, the congressperson, is innocent until proven guilty. But in no way, shape, or form should they have been using taxpayer dollars to settle these suits. Because, not that I'm a betting man, but I'm pretty sure that some folks found out about this and decided, boy, this is an easy payday for me. They're going to pay hush money just because I accuse them. And there's a Senate rule. There's an article. It links down here at the bottom. Senate Rules and Appropriation Committee released OOC harassment settlement data. And this is, I'll have the link. All these links are up in the show notes page every day after I get done with the show. Senate Rules and Appropriation Committee releases OOC harassment settlement. And this was released on December 21st. And it pretty much says exactly what they're going on. But they're going down. The following information regarding settlements between fiscal year 1999 and fiscal year 2017 was provided by the OCC on Rules and Administration and the Committee on Appropriations. Settlements arising from claims against member-led Senate employing offices. And it just goes down, first one right there, age and race discrimination reprisal. And it gives you the settlement, tells you exactly what the settlement is, and it goes down through there. A lot of these, age and discrimination, sexual discrimination, FLSA violation and reprisal. And just on and on. And I'm not sure what I know what a FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, and does the, like I said, I didn't take the time to actually look this up. FSL, it has to do family leave something. Let me look it up here real quick. I didn't even, honestly, I was going through that, I was just breezing over them. Fair Labor Standards Act. Okay, Fair Labor Standards Act is what the FLSA is. So there's a lot of these that are in there. And again, some of these, if they're in the normal workings with their job, why were these hidden from public view? Why were these hidden from public knowledge? And again, to me, even though I try to look at things that are innocent until proven guilty, this doesn't look good for them. It just really doesn't look good for them. And we have this one, and this isn't the first time that Sheila Jackson Lee has been in trouble for, you know, putting her foot in her mouth or her actions that she does. And I briefly hit on this story earlier in the week. A booted airline passenger accused of racism by Sheila Jackson Lee is a Democrat Spanish teacher. Now, if you don't know what happened, I'll just read this. Basically, this disgruntled United Airlines passenger accused of racism by a Texas Democrat Representative Sheila Jackson Lee photographed Guatemalan war crimes, teaches Spanish, and is a long-time registered Democrat according to voting records reviewed by the Daily Caller's News Foundation. Jean Marie Simmons, 63, accused United Airlines on Twitter of bumping her from a December 18 flight from Houston to Washington, D.C. in order to accommodate Lee. The airline claims that Simmons voluntarily canceled her flight in the wake of inclement weather reports, a charge Simmons vehemently denies. Lee responded with an angry Twitter tirade on her own Tuesday, accusing Simmons, listed as a hard Democrat in a voter model examined by the DCNF, as targeting her because of her race. Since this is not any fault of mine, the way the individual continued to act appeared to be, upon reflection, because I was an African American, seemingly an easy target, along with the African American flight attendant, who was very, very nice, the Congresswoman wrote in one of the tweets describing the incident. Simmons was on the last leg of her return trip from Guatemala when the incident occurred. It was not her first trip to the Central American country. In fact, she spent much of the 80s documenting war crimes there in the wake of a military coup that saw thousands murdered, raped, and starved. First, she traveled to Guatemala at the behest of Amnesty International, who asked her to take photographs for an impending report on the government's role in extrajudicial killings and abductions. Simmons eventually published a book of photographs depicting the years of violence she witnessed entitled Guatemala, Eternal Spring, Eternal Tyranny. Simmons describes her harrowing work in a 2012 New York Times article written on the occasion of former Guatemalan General Efraim Rios Mont's war crimes trial. Anyway, it goes on down. down here towards the bottom, it says the recent mishap is one of a handful of United customer relation crisis in 2017. The airline made headlines in April for a viral video of a passenger being dragged off the flight for refusing to give up his seat to the flight crew. The airline came under fire just 2 months later after another video shot in 2015 emerged depicting a United employees assaulting a 71-year-old man. Simmons did not respond to the DCNF's the Daily Caller request to comment in time for publication. Now, United Airlines, what we reported earlier in the week, United Airlines said that she canceled the flight because her flight wasn't going to make it. They looked, they said it was delayed and they weren't going to make it. Okay? And that's what United Airlines was saying. However, this picture, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a picture here of a gentleman sitting in the aisle seat and Sheila Jackson Lee sitting in a window seat in first class. And guess who took this picture? Well, it was Simmons. She took that picture. Now, someone's lying here, and I almost have to believe this lady because of the evidence we have here, because United Airlines said that her flight was going to be delayed and she wasn't going to make her connecting flight. So they bumped Sheila Jackson Lee up into first class. Or they gave her first class seat away to Sheila Jackson Lee. I doubt Sheila Jackson Lee would sit back, and I don't know for sure, but knowing this woman over the years, just her public persona, I doubt that she would want to sit back with the rabble in common carriage, as it were. You know, back in the economy seats, or even, I don't know if this flight has business or not. And this actually looks more like business than it does first class, but they said it was first class ticket. So I'll believe them on that. But if this lady, and the airline should know this, if a flight's going to be on time or not, if the lady isn't going to make her flight, how in the world did she get on there to take this picture? She evidently made her flight. She had booked her flight for first class. And in my opinion, my humble opinion, they should have asked Sheila Jackson Lee to give up her seat to go back, you know, in the economy or coach or whatever, because this lady had the ticket first. But now Sheila Jackson Lee's playing the race card. I don't think it had anything to do with race. I think it had to do with she's a congresswoman from Texas. And how dare she not get a first class seat? Yeah, and because there's a lot of politicians that are very arrogant and they think that they should have the best of everything just because of their position. I met a couple senators when I was in the Navy that they were treated like royalty when they came over. And when I was in Scotland, they were treated like royalty over there. And that always kind of irked me because I'm thinking, well, they're senators. They work for the people. You know, we don't have royalty in this country. But that was the attitude. I mean, it's okay to be respectful to them, but to treat them like they're the next coming, if you know what I mean, I think that goes a little too far. Maybe I read too much into it when I was in the Navy, but I've really changed my mind about that. And I didn't really want to take the time to look up and see if there's other instances of this. But I'm just wondering if anybody would research this, and I'm going to do a little bit of research into this, if they find, you know, that this has happened with other folks, not just the Simmons, who happens to be a part of the Democrat Party. Oh, and maybe it's a good thing this lady doesn't live in her district, because maybe she wouldn't get her vote next time around just because this happened. You know, so again, it just, the look of impropriety here with Sheila Jackson Lee. You know, it just, you know, if the airline told her that they didn't have any more first class seats, did she put up a fuss? I don't know. You know, are there videos out there where she was fussing at the ticket counter to get her ticket back to Washington, D.C.? We don't know. I don't know how far in this little investigation has gone. You know, maybe she was berating the person behind it. Do you know who I am? We don't know. You know, so maybe, hopefully, we'll find this out. I'm going to still continue to follow this and do some more research on this. And when I come up with some new stuff, I'll report this to you. But, you know, again, it just smacks of impropriety. You know, here's a sitting congressperson, and a potential constituent, maybe isn't a constituent, I know she isn't, you know, but she came on the plane, she had a first class ticket. Wouldn't you think that Sheila Jackson Lee, being the bigger person, would say, you know what, you know, they gave me this seat in error, here's your seat, I'll go back and sit and coach. It doesn't appear that that conversation actually took place. It really doesn't. So again, we have this, you know, we have these rogue elements, you know, in Congress. And she's one of these. If you ever hear, I don't know, Dave, if you've ever heard her speak, but she is one of the most willfully ignorant congresspersons we have in Congress. You know, her lack of knowledge about certain things is just, it's mind-boggling. It really is. Now, before I get into this last one, just a couple articles here I'm not going to get to in detail, because I want to spend some time on this Me Too is turning into a witch hunt over by Shika Dalmia over at reason.com. There's an article here in the Daily Signal by Fred Lucas posted on the 11th of December. You didn't hear hardly a peep out of this on the lamestream media. Fewer blacks and Hispanics go jobless under Trump. All the economic indicators show that everybody's doing better under President Trump, you know, regardless of the rhetoric that's going on out there. There's new things on the horizon as far as deregulating things. I was talking to my dad about this last night, and he was complaining about the price of fuel. And I said, well, you can blame that on other presidents who signed executive orders not allowing, through the EPA, not allowing new refineries to be built in 40 years in the United States. And if we're not refining the fuel here, we're buying it from somebody else, and we're paying that middleman cost to ship it over here so we can have it for our vehicles. So President Trump got rid of that executive order, and down in Texas they're building the first oil refinery in 40 years. And hopefully that's the first of many that come online to drop our fuel prices. And again, I was looking at the U6 unemployment rate. The government uses the U3 because it looks better, but the U6 has been on a downward decline ever since the beginning of this year, from the inauguration on. And it's down just below 9% unemployment. Now, the U6 takes every category, those that are newly unemployed, those that have been on unemployment for a long time, and those that quit seeking a job and are not on unemployment and sort of stepped out of the workforce. They take all those numbers in, and to me, that's the unemployment record. The U3 only looks at those new claims that are coming in and those that are still on unemployment. They don't count the ones that quit looking for a job or have no more unemployment to depend on. They're still looking for a job, but they don't have unemployment. They don't take in all those numbers. That's why I always go to the U6 number. So it's actually just a little bit below 9, but it's actually on a downward trend, which is great. You know, the stock markets are up, and a lot of the stock market exuberance is it's not a bubble exuberance. It's, you know, they see a president that's going to work with these businesses, and these businesses are starting to spend money. They're starting to bring money back into the country, and this is going to benefit everybody. You know, because I never worked for a poor man. I never had a steady 9-to-5, 40-hour-a-week job where a poor man employed me. It was always somebody that was well-to-do, or a corporation that had money that was able to afford my services. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with giving the folks in the country that pay the most taxes, giving them the tax break. Or the biggest tax break. I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with that. I hope that I'm up in that bracket someday. Lord willing, the creeks don't rise. So their economic indicators in the country are just, they're going the right way, folks. And whether you like Donald Trump or not, in that respect, whether you think he's responsible for it or not, which I do believe he bears a lot of the responsibility for it, things are looking up. Things are looking better. Again, federal workers posed to overtake salaries of senators in D.C. Gets highest pay raise by Paul Bedard over at the Washington Examiner, posted on Tuesday the 26th. And again, some of the wealthiest counties in the country are all around D.C. because federal government workers and bureaucrats and stuff like that, they make some serious scratch, plus the benefits they got. You know, and again, you have to wonder, is all those bureaucracies constitutional to begin with? And if they're not, and they got rid of that, how much of a deficit would we actually have in this country? These are questions that need to be asked and answered. I have this article here. I didn't read the whole thing. I was skimming over it. I really want to dig into this. Right-wing celebrities play fast and loose with the history. This is by Paul Gottfried over at theamericanconservative.com, which is a website that I frequent, and I like the articles on there. But some of them that they call out is like Dinesh D'Souza about their playing fast and loose with history. And I've watched some of his documentaries, Dinesh D'Souza, and I've actually looked up the references to everything in his documentaries, and I haven't found a problem with them. I didn't think he was playing fast and loose with them. But again, even in conservative circles, there are some who are the right conservative, and some of the folks that are the wrong type of conservatives. And so there's some fighting even in the conservative ranks. And I think a lot of it has to do, from my understanding of my reading, has to do mainly between establishment Republicans and those that are outside of the establishment. And then finally, there's a story here from the Climate Change Dispatch by Martin Armstrong. Now, the Climate Change Dispatch, they are a group of folks that debunk all the man-made or man-caused climate change in the world. And now this article, the years I have to question, but anyway, sun activity collapses to lowest level in 9,300 years. First off, the 9,300 I have to put into question because we don't know what the world was doing or the sun was doing 9,300 years ago. I don't think there's a scientific formula that anybody can come up with. Maybe they can, but I don't think there is, to determine what the sun was doing 9,300 years ago. And if you're a creationist like me, the sun wasn't around 9,300 years ago, but I digress. That's an article you can go in there and check at thedanclemenshow.com. But what I really want to get into is real quick here towards the end of the show, or I'm almost out of time for the hour. I'll be going into briefly into a second hour of this. This is a Reason.com article by Shika Delmaya, posted on the 27th, yesterday. Me Too is turning into a witch hunt. Taking down decent men on flimsy grounds like Freep editor will discredit it. And this is very, very serious here. I think some of these innocent folks, whether it's men or women, that are caught up in this Me Too movement, I don't know who they would sue. I don't know if there's some central location of this movement or central figures in this movement, but they have to have some type of recourse and redress on this. They really should, especially if they're proven innocent. Movements collapse when they become more interested in collecting heads than advancing their cause. Unfortunately, the very worthy Me Too movement against sexual harassment and abuse might have reached that point. Last week, Me Too took down Pulitzer Prize winner Stephen Henderson, who was the editorial page editor of the liberal Detroit Free Press. Henderson was fired for inappropriate behavior, even though no woman actively complained about it, that allegedly violated the newspaper's zero tolerance policy. But if this standard, both too vague and too strict, is going to be rigorously or religiously enforced on workplace interactions in the post-Harvey Weinstein era, few men or women, for that matter, will ever feel safe in their jobs. Henderson is something of an icon in Michigan, where he lives. He is a prolific writer and a popular media personality. I first became acquainted with him when I was a scribe at the Detroit News conservative editorial board in the mid-1990s, and he on the liberal Freep board that he later headed. He also hosts Detroit Today for WDET, a local NPR affiliate, while he occasionally invites me to spar over Obamacare and charter schools, on which we vehemently disagree, and discuss immigration reform and President Trump's draconian law and order agenda, on which we largely agree. Henderson's travails began when he ran an editorial at the Freep calling on Democrat Representative John Conyers to resign after credible allegations surfaced that not only had Conyers sexually harassed female staffers in his employ, but he then used $27,000 in government funds, i.e. taxpayer funds, folks, to offer one a no-show job in exchange for dropping her complaint before the U.S. Congress Office of Compliance and signing a legal paper asserting that Conyers had done nothing wrong. Henderson's editorial incensed some of Conyers' local supporters, including Reverend W.J. Rideout III, a local firebrand who accused Henderson of sexual harassment. Rideout, or Readout, however you want to pronounce that, offered no names of victims or substantiation or details, which is why his own TV show has been indefinitely suspended for lacking journalistic standards. Still, his allegations triggered an internal probe by Freep. Henderson explained on his show subsequently that he supported and encouraged the investigation because he had nothing to hide. He says he racked his brain for every relevant interaction with his colleagues over the last 10 years and reported whatever he could think of candidly and openly to the investigators. The Freep's fishing expedition eventually turned up two interactions that HR decided were inappropriate, but both occurred in social situations outside the workplace. One involved a sexually themed conversation, and another an interaction with someone who was his co-equal in another department. We don't know much more besides that, and while obviously some graphic or threatening sexual themed conversations with colleagues would indeed be grounds for termination, that really shouldn't be the case here. After all, neither woman, according to Henderson, ever filed a complaint against him or even wanted the company to take any action. A version of events that Freep and its parent company, Gannett, had not disputed. Gannett declined to comment for this article, and a message left for the Freep publisher, Peter Bahatia, was not answered. WDET has conducted its own investigation and came up empty, and is therefore not nixing Henderson's show. There is still much we don't know about Henderson's situation. More may very well come out, but as things stands, the flimsy accusations and the process that led to their airing make Henderson's firing seem like a massive overreaction. Sexual harassment is a serious issue, especially in the workplace. All people deserve to have a comfortable work environment free from harassment. Many of the high-profile heads that have rolled since the Me Too movement emerged clearly deserve their comeuppance, including, of course, Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein, whose multi-decade sexual predation triggered it all. So did actor Kevin Spacey, who is accused by 24 men, including a 14-year-old boy, of unwanted advances. NBC's Matt Lauer, who apparently had a button under his desk to automatically lock the door when he was propositioning co-workers, and PBS Charlie Rose, who allegedly groped women and exposed himself to them. There were multiple victims and clear patterns of extreme behavior in these cases. But the basis for and this, folks, I'm having a problem with this words. Let me sound it out. The defenestration of others is much less clear. Celebrated humorist Garrison Killior's popular show, The Prairie Home Comparison, the Prairie Home Companion, was axed by Minnesota Public Radio because Killior put his hands on the bare back of a distraught woman whose shirt was loose. As he tells it, the New Yorker's Ryan Lizza was let go for improper sexual conduct. that he claims consisted of a consensual relationship with a coworker. But even in these cloudier cases, the women came forward and launched their complaints. That doesn't seem to be the case with Henderson. The Freep launched an investigation based on allegations by an unaffected outside party with a grudge, not any of the women involved. And the women who its investigation did finally fetch up, as best as one can tell, demand no action against Henderson. It's no wonder that Henderson is now exploring a lawsuit. All this suggests that the climate of censoriousness that Me Too has generated spooked the Freep so much that it wanted to take no chances. But there's something quasi-totalitarian when a company starts going after employees for victimless behavior that has been retroactively branded as inappropriate. It might also end up targeting women who engage in sexual themed conversations, replacing the fear of sexual harassment with that of HR inquisitions. Henderson's plight is the clearest case yet of Me Tooism run amok. Gina Wortham wrote in the New York Times that she is unperturbed by the excesses of the movement because she wants every single man to be put on notice and feel vulnerable just the way women do. But a movement that thoughtlessly and reflexively throws decent men under the bus will discredit itself and hurt its ability to take down the real abusers. That's a pity, because responsible reckoning to hold genuine monsters accountable is something that women do indeed need. And again, this is something that it bothers me greatly, and this is why I did that episode a week ago about the idea of you're innocent until proven guilty. And in Mr. Henderson's case, it wasn't even brought by anybody that was affected, and nor does it seem like that the two women that could have brought something against Mr. Henderson and doesn't even know Mr. Readout and his basis for his accusations, other than, and this is something that happens in D.C., this is something that has been going on for many, many years in politics and these social justice tyrant movements out there. It's the seriousness of the accusation that we need to investigate. Even though they take nothing into consideration leading up to that investigation, just having the accusations alone is enough. Okay, to a certain extent, if someone feels that they're sexually harassed, most companies have in place through their HR, human resources department, they have a plan in place to take care of this. Now, one of the most preemptive plans these companies could introduce is the too deep leadership. Now, in Mr. Henderson's case, both of these happened after work. They were off the premises. Whether they had anything to do with work or not, one of them was a co-equal. Okay? Neither one of the ladies wanted to bring any charges up against Mr. Henderson because, again, it doesn't sound like that they were being threatened by Mr. Henderson or pressed into not bringing it forward. But I think, first off, I think the allegations need to be investigated on who's bringing the allegations. If it's a third party that has no relationship with anybody involved, because they give no specifics, honestly, that accusation needs to be dismissed out of hand. Just because there's an accusation brought doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything there. So I think the first part of the investigation should be who brought it, and are they doing it in the name of somebody? Do they have any facts that they can bring forth? And if they don't, then they're a detached third party that has no business. And this clearly, to me, looks like a political ploy by this Mr. Redoubt because of John Conyers being forced out of Congress. And again, I believe that any congressman that paid any type of hush money for especially for sexual harassment, the rest of them I guess we can deal with later, but right now let's deal with sexual harassment. If any of them paid out money, that needs to be investigated. Whether there was confidentiality clauses And most of those confidentiality clauses were, if you probably dig into those, were to protect the congressman, not the person that was bringing the accusations. I think the person, evidently someone brought the accusations. That actually definitely needs to be investigated. It sounds like there may not have been investigations. It was like with John Conyers, they were just paid a know-nothing job wage to make it go away. And there was no investigation done. And so they're trying to sweep it under the carpet. And this guy was mad because John Conyers was forced out of Congress because of John Conyers' actions, not anybody else's. And to go after somebody, again, this all smacks of me is turning into a witch hunt. Every little thing is going to be put under the microscope, and it doesn't matter if the man or woman's innocent until proven guilty. This Me Too movement and the social justice tyrants that have taken it over have flipped that on its head to the totalitarian ideology of guilty until proven innocent. And that is going to ruin a lot of lives. It really is. And these, honestly, the way these people are acting, the way these folks are acting, I really don't think they care. I really don't think they care that they're going to ruin these innocent men's lives because, you know, it's just the seriousness of the accusation, and they never investigate the actual accusation to start with on that. So we're living in perilous times, folks. We really are. I'm not telling you guys anything new, but again, in America today, we have too many rogue elements that are running around in our government that are not following the Constitution, not doing what's decent and in order for their jobs or for their livelihood or for their legacy. And we have too many free radicals and American citizens that are running around with only part of the information they need to make a rational decision about things. They are willfully, not woefully, they are willfully ignorant because they don't want to educate themselves. Even if you bring them, even if you help do some of the research for them and say, hey, look at this, let me know what your idea is on this, and they just dismiss it out of hand because of the source or because it runs counter to their ideology. So we have too many free radicals as American citizens out there that are just running around. It's like the blind leading the blind. And they're operating under this herd mentality that is, again, it's going to get other citizens hurt. It's absolutely going to get other citizens hurt, and they don't care. They just literally don't care about that at all. They really don't. Well, folks, if you like the show, please comment on it. Please leave a comment below. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so you know when I put up new videos. And please help support my show either through my Cafe Press site at thedanclementshow.com or my Patreon. You can get there through thedanclementshow.com, and I also have a PayPal donation button up there. I'm looking for monthly donations, $1, $5, $10. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm looking for these donations to help support me, support this show, pay for the things I need to do for this show, and expand this show to make it the best Christian political commentary show on YouTube. This has been the Dan Clements Show. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior. Remember, if you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow noon for Free for All Friday edition of the Dan Clements Show. Have a great rest of the day, and God bless, and we'll see you again tomorrow.